Hello. This is Katie Domke, and this video is for CSC322 or Mobile Applications First Assignment, the Rolled Dice app. We're just going to be starting out with an overview of Udemy with the completion markers for the videos, and then we're going to move on to a short demo of the app itself, of the Rolled Dice app, and then we're going to finish up with a code overview. And we just start out with Udemy. So the Roll Dice app is labeled in section 2, is found in section 2 of the Udemy course. It's approximately 3 hours and 27 minutes long if you're not pausing or taking any notes. And so just gonna do a quick scroll of the completion markers for the course. I did take a few notes, and you'll probably see those in my code. I didn't separate them from main yet, but I won't read from them, don't worry. But if we go to the app itself, I have my Android Studio open here. And basically the overall purpose of this app is to have a displayed image of a dice or a die and have a button that you can press that every time you press it, it'll give you a different face of the die randomly. And it should do it every time you click it. And sometimes you randomly get the same face of the die twice. And so part of the design was we were shown how to get the gradient in the back, how to center it, and how to resize the image itself, and then adjust the text to be a different color, be a different size, and then also have spacing in between the image and the text. So if we go to the code here, so what we have is 4 main files that we worked with this time, though one of them kind of got superseded in the process. But here's a main. This is the main, as in the name, the thing that runs the app itself. And mostly all that you see going on at the surface is just having the app and then calling for gradient container, which is the next one I'll go over, and then providing some colors for gradient container. And then it imports from gradient container because it was emphasized in the course that in order to use something or connect it to each other, you have to have an import statement for everything. So since we have it imported here, we're going to go over to gradient container, and here we have the same import that most of them are going to have, if not all of them. They should have this import for material Dart. So we have it here. He said that we had to have it in every file that we create. This was commented out. This is styled text, but that got superseded, as you'll see. And then we have dice roller Dart, which will be coming up next. But sorry. If we go with gradient container, we have these variables, which are the start and end alignment for our gradient itself. So we learned that with a gradient like this one, a linear gradient, that you have to give it almost like coordinates or a direction to give it. So its default was, I'm pretty sure it was vertical when we first started out, and to make it look a little more appealing and follow the Udemy tutorials, we had to give it a different direction. And so we have our start alignment, which you might saw it's a little bit hard to see with how dark the colors are sometimes, but it starts in the top left corner and then it fades into a different color in the bottom right. And so we have our final variables for the colors because we did not plan to change it during this mobile app. And as we could see over here, we did set it in main itself. So that set doesn't change. That's why we have as a final type, And so we're using that alignment, as I said, up at the top. We could find it again being used in the build function. And then this just decides where the dice is basically going to be, or the die. And he did give us a different approach where you set the colors in the build function itself, but he gave us two different approaches, and then I just followed along with one, which was setting the colors in the main file. And so if we move on to dice roller, since we had it imported here, it was using dice roller. Let's see what dice roller says. And so again, we have material dart, and then we had to include dart math, which gives us access to the random function. And so we're using that to have our numbers in the names of our images. So to elaborate on that, so our default that's going to be there is 2, but we want it to keep generating a random number but not take up more memory and more space. So this kind of shortcuts around it, and then we have it so it's limited to only generating from 1 to 6. And so that aligns with our image files that were sourced from the Udemy course. But we have 1 to 6. And then that number is concatenated into the name of the image that's being called. And so every time that it's called, it's going to give a different one of these images to be displayed. With just controls how big the image itself was on the app. And then this was how we had I might not have spent too much time on it, but it does have a gap between the text and the dice or die itself, and that's made possible with this size box. In other cases, if it did have something inside of it, we would have seen a value inside, but for now it was just used as some space to make it look more presentable. And so roll dice, we're just calling this to get the new number, and then we're getting our style for our text. So this was shown in the Udemy course to be this other file styled text. And so here, pretty simple. So we just have the text that's passed in, and then we have it's just color white, and we give it a size. But found a way to integrate that in so we didn't have to use this file anymore. And so now we have it so it sets the color of the text here, and then it sets the font size, which never changes. That's why we have the const here. And then just the text itself saying roll dice. And to use the assets and images, he emphasized in the videos to make a new folder to keep them all together and also separate from everything else. And for him, he made a folder for assets and then a subfolder for images. And then we would just drag and drop the images into said folder. And then we had to come to this file, which we didn't interact with too much. Usually we don't touch it, or at least from my understanding with just this assignment, we don't touch it that much. But for this, to get these to be able to be accessed and used, we had to uncomment this assets, which had like two different lines, but I got rid of them. But we had to put the full path, or at least the path within the project, to each of the files. And so then we could use it following that same convention. And so, and also he emphasized that some things are very made easier with Dart itself and with Flutter, and that sometimes Flutter just supplies things that we can use and is very helpful. And then there's Dart, and then in some cases it underlines in like a little blue like squiggly, and it gives us a pointer for how or when we should use const and when it's more redundant or when it's not necessary to be used. And then this was just a highlight for me, just figuring out that colors, as in color S here, would mean that there's presets for colors, and then there's color, and then from our ARGB, which lets you use a color picker, which is kind of fun, in my opinion. And then I do have notes here. I won't read from them because they're kind of long, but I did find it cool that there is automatic formatting that he used a lot, and it was very helpful for following along with him because it automatically formats the code. Like there's a little bit of it here where you could find where the end of each piece basically is because it notates for you. I believe I also have it here: center, container, box decoration, and linear gradient. I think dice roller does have it a little bit, just text style, text button. That was also just something that I thought was pretty interesting. Control space gives you the suggestions. Some of them probably won't give me too many, but it'll give you suggestions of what you can put in there, and then you could hover over different parts of your code to find out what the type is, what it wants as an argument or a parameter. And that's about it for this one. Very enjoyable. I think it was a fun and simple app to make. And it was a good introduction to Flutter, I think. So, with that, thank you, and see you next time.